On today's show, we're going to do a deep dive into Villanova's Maddy Siegrist and UCLA's Em Osborne, Episode 5 of our 2023 WNBA Draft Prospect Profile series. If you listen to this on Apple or Spotify, I highly recommend you flip this over to YouTube to get video footage that comes with the detailed analysis of their game. Locked On Women's Basketball starts now.
Ogunbowale for the win. Good!
You are Locked On Women's Basketball, your daily podcast on women's basketball.
You're Locked On Women's Basketball. My name's Hunter Cruse. I'm a Saturday host covering the WNBA Draft and college basketball at large. Thanks for making Locked On Women's Basketball your first listen every day. And remember, Locked On Women's Basketball is free and available on all platforms, including YouTube. Today's episode is brought to you by LinkedIn. LinkedIn Jobs help you find the quality candidates you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNBA. I'm joined by co-host Em Adler. Em is a beat writer for Seattle Storm and heads our written coverage of the WNBA Draft at thenexthoops.com. So let's get into Maddy Siegrist, one of the most prolific stat profiles you'll see of any player, regardless of sport, regardless of level of competition. So just give me the scoop on her stat profile.
First up, she's the Big East all-time leading scorer. That is a conference that has included everyone who has ever gone to UConn. Well, not everyone has ever gone to UConn, but almost everyone has ever gone to UConn. That's Maya Moore. That's Dinah Taurasi. The leading scorer above all of them is Maddy Siegrist. Let's basically abridge this to last year. When she returned from a broken hand injury in December 2021, through the end of that season, she averaged 28 points, 10 rebounds, 1.9 assists, 1.4 steals, and 0.9 blocks on 61.5% true shooting and 34.1% usage. Big numbers. Not only had that never been done before, the only players who'd ever come close across a full season were EDD, Shanae in her Wooden Award season, and Jasmine Dickey that same year. And this year, her senior year, Maddy Siegrist has basically improved on all of those numbers by a significant margin. Per synergy, offensively, she has taken at least 20 shots in 8 different play types, and she rates in at least the 80th percentile in literally all of them. Her jumper rates out around the 87th, overall, her jump shot rates in the 93rd percentile. It's elite both off the catch and off the dribble. I'm laughing because there's nothing in her stat. We could talk about her stat profile for an entire episode. It's so ridiculous, the numbers that she's put up. And I had a little bit of a qualm last year about maybe the level of competition that they had in their schedule and in the Big East. The Big East is going to have 4 teams in the NCAA tournament this year. And they've had a good non-conference. This is a really good stat line against really quality opponents. And if you want by comparison nationwide, look no further. For those stat heads who know RAPM, she ranks first in RAPM per 100 possessions, just first in the entire country.
So how would you describe her role within Villanova's system? They like to go like motion offense. They like to run a lot of flare screens for her. But
Siegrist's role within Villanova's offense is Villanova's offense, really. Villanova's offense is basically Maddy Siegrist, and then you also have Burke and Lucy Olson sort of playing off of them. And I like Christine Dalsafe filling some holes, but look, they have some shooters who can also like handle the rock. They can get to the cup. They can make good passes, but it's the Maddy Siegrist show. She's running a 37% usage this rate. She's scoring 29 points a game on a team that lately has not really cracked 80 all that often. It's the Maddy Siegrist show, and they play real well around her.
So that's a good point with her usage rate because near 38% this season, roughly 34% last season, and then 34% as a sophomore, then also 30% as a freshman. So she has never had like a condensed role where you'll see with some players where like, okay, when they're a freshman, sophomore, they kind of have to build up into a role. So you can kind of see them out in that role player type role. But it's tough projecting Maddy Siegrist because I just don't think she's going to be this high usage player, like where she's number 1, number 2 option on like a real winning team. So how does she project like translating that usage down? Because she'll probably still need a pretty high usage just because that's how she's played and that's kind of how she operates, where she's She can definitely knock down catch and shoot jumpers, but the most effective part of her game is playing out a triple threat, getting to that mid range. One of the most unblockable shots I've ever seen.
Hmm. I sent you a clip, and we'll put this in the video. I sent you a clip a few days ago. There was some replay that I think captured it really well, where it was slow motion, zoomed in right on her. And for those of you at home, you can imagine shooting a jump shot. Basically, the average jump shot, even the best ones, you take the ball down to maybe like your neck, your chin, whatever, before you shoot it off. You're about that height. Maddy Siegrist's jumper, she usually genuinely does not take the ball below her hairline. It stays that high. I had the question for you when I sent you that, like, she's listed 6'1". The jumper is going to play up because it's harder to block at that height, and she gets it off so well and so accurately. You said I'm inclined to agree. It would play as if she's 6'4". So I think, in terms of on the ball offense, I think we both think there's a lot here that can and probably will translate. But in terms of that lower usage role, I think the question isn't what it looks like when she has the ball in her hands so much. We can get into that if we want to. But I think a lot of it is the question that we really posed at the end of last episode, which is, what does it look like when she doesn't have the ball in her hands? I'm curious what you've seen on that end.
So, as great of a shooter she is, her jump shot's very set. Like a very old school type player for me, where instead of running off a movement screen, you'll see where some other like really good shooters, like at her level, like you can look up Hannah Jump or Ashley Jones as another player like that, where these players have the ability to get up shots quicker. And even though Siegrist does have a pretty unblockable shot, whenever she is running off a screen or she's like going off those flare screens, for example, she will like set her jumper. She doesn't ever look sped up. Like it's almost like she's playing. It's almost like there's no defenders there guarding her. Like her turnover rate is unreal. She never turns over the ball. So if we're really projecting her role like off the ball, it's tough because I think sometimes you'll see with Villanova's offense where like the back cuts this, but I'm trying to see if that's like, because she's not the greatest athlete like in terms of like off the line burst. So you really can't bank on the cutting ability being anything great, as good as she is in her instincts and feel for the game. I'm just wondering what her offense looks like off the ball besides like spotting up as a shooter.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of that athleticism piece, you can see this specifically against UConn, but it's sort of, or the games Villanova played against UConn, but it sort of translates, I think, in most of the games she's played. She's got enough burst that she can routinely beat your like average-ish athletes at center. And she's got enough strength that if you can get her the ball in the mid post, she can pretty much get where she even on the perimeter, she can get where she wants to against your average fives or your average fours who don't have enough strength. But in terms of what she can do defensively, which we'll get into in a bit, I think we would both say it's hard to profile her as someone who can actually flip back and forth between the 4 and the 5 in the W like she can in college. So it becomes a little trickier to say, well, if she's going up against 4s full time, what does that look like athletically? And I think it's tricky there. I don't really have any doubt about her ability to be an efficient player and her ability to score well and be a good part of an offense when you get the ball in her hands, especially because, like you said, she'll set her feet, but like you said as well, the jumper is kind of unblockable. So you see this routinely against some pretty great defenders. As long as you get separation on the screen that you're pulling her up in, like if you can just get the ball in her hand, she will get that jumper up and she will usually hit it. The question for me, like you said, in terms of the athleticism, in terms of maybe not the best cutter, is what happens when, she's like, even Arike Gumbawale, who's, running usage rates way too high for any player in the W, she's in like the low to mid 30s, which is below what Siegrist is at for her career right now. So for me, it's what's she doing off the ball? She can spot up. And I think probably the question for WNBA general managers is going to come down to how much do you think that she can just be like a stand in the corner spot up threat when you don't get her the ball, and is that enough to play her for when you do get her the ball? Because she's not much of a cutter, she's not much of a screener or a roller, and like lob threat finisher at the moment. So it is tough there. And I think the real question there is, if you are putting her in that role off the ball, then when you try to toggle her on the ball, is it going to look like what you and I saw when Villanova played Baylor back in November, or in the couple games against UConn, where you had really athletic forwards guarding her basically face up, Dariana Little Page Buggs and Bella Fauntleroy, the Baylor freshman forwards, or Leah Edwards.
I wanted to say this, Leah Edwards did give her a lot of trouble in that recent matchup, from what
Yeah,
I saw.
she gave a
On
lot
the
of trouble in
perimeter,
both
too.
matchups. Yeah,
On the
yeah.
perimeter, too.
Leah Edwards is really impressive, to be
Oh,
clear.
yeah. She's a elite WNBA caliber defender for me. And just a
Oh,
side tangent.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that Siegrist showed that she has like the strength to be able to get where she wants against Edwards. But the length of Edwards combined with the fact that when you're going up against a 4, there is a 5 providing rim protection, and it's really hard for Siegrist to be able to like consistently get stuff off against all of that length focused all the way on her. And
So
I
after
think
the
that's where you run into trouble.
Yeah, so after the break, myself and Em will dive into the defensive portion of Seeger's game because there's a little bit more on that side of the ball. And then we'll also talk about UCLA's Cruse and Osborne. As a small business owner or hiring manager, you know that success in 2023 all depends on the team members you surround yourself with. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. With LinkedIn Jobs, you can hire qualified candidates more efficiently by matching open roles with people who have the skills, values, and experiences to help you achieve your goals. LinkedIn Jobs helps you quickly attract qualified candidates to your open jobs with targeted tools. They go beyond resume data by using insights from their job post, company, and their 875 million member profiles to put your post in front of the most qualified candidates. Identify the most qualified candidates on LinkedIn Jobs and connect with them fast and for free. LinkedIn Jobs makes it easy to screen and rate applicants based on your job qualifications all on one platform. It's why small business owners rank LinkedIn Jobs #1 in delivering quality hires versus leading competitors. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find quality candidates you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedonnba. That's linkedin.com/lockedonnba to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. And we're back. I'm your host, Hunter Cruse. I'm joined by my host, Em Adler. So where are we at on Siegrist as a defender? You kind of touched on it before the break where she's strong, so she can battle in the post a little bit, but where do you see her, because she's kind of a tweener, where do you see her profiling at the next level?
Yeah, so I think we've had good discussions in the past couple weeks, and we've gone at this from a little bit of a philosophical perspective. So I think I'll kind of start from the philosophical standpoint of, as we just spent like 11 minutes talking about or whatever, she profiles as a possibly elite offensive player, probably not, but quite possibly. So the real key to her defense is basically just, can you stick her somewhere where she won't be an enormous liability and you won't really have to worry about what you're giving up with having her? Can she just stick enough to make it worth it to have her offense? Because if the offense doesn't translate, none of this matters. And so we have to find a spot. I'm not concerned if she's not Leah Edwards, but I'm concerned, can we find a spot? Like I said before, she has better foot speed and better agility, better lateral quickness than most 5s, and she has better strength than most 4s. Probably not at the next level. She's probably about average strength for a 4, but she's quite good here. In that sense, I mean, she has strengths on the defenseman. I want to be clear. Like, I'm not saying she's a bad defensive player. There's a reason she's basically averaging 3 stocks a game. But the strengths to me are tricky. The strengths are like a 5. She has really good hand-eye coordination in the post. She's really good at disrupting entry passes. She's not good at stopping like at a post entry position, but she's good at disrupting the passes. She's good at disrupting finishes. She's really good with her hands on the ball when she needs to be. But for me, I have trouble just not even saying that she has weaknesses, but just getting a feel for the rest of her defensive game. Where are you at?
So, like in the week leading up to this episode, what I was saying to you is this is like the toughest evaluation in this class for me, because as great as her offense is, there's some questions with how it would translate. On the defensive end, like I'll overlay it right here, but there was a really good clip against UConn in the third quarter where she just displayed strong verticality, which is a main thing in her defensive ability, I think, on like a Edwards post entry pass, and she blocked the shot. And yeah, I just think that some of the stuff that she does on defense is her lower body is pretty strong, and like you kind of see with her turnover rate, she's super smart, and that will go a long way, especially if we're just saying she has to be average. If she can just be smart And I think whenever you consider that her usage rate's so high, that'll benefit her defensive ability and defensive ability to like be locked in because she won't have to be so focused on carrying an entire offense at the next level. So I
Yeah,
would,
I think that's a good point.
yeah, I would say like, what do you think is like the percent chance that she is like a decent defender, and what's the percent chance that she's like a plus on defense for you?
If we're defining decent as like at least mediocre,
Hmm.
I would say it's probably maybe like 30%, 35%. Which to be clear, like it's very rare that someone is at least a 50 is like well above 50%. So like that's not bad necessarily. Again, she has tools, and I expect them to translate. How it comes together, for me is the issue. So as far as like a plus defender, I would be shocked if she ever approaches that. There are certainly odds to put on it, but I would genuinely be shocked if she does that because I don't even think she's a plus defender right now. Um, she's an impact defender, and her stocks really make up for any issues she has in basically allowing mismatches. But I think there's a little bit of a trickiness there. But I think this is also a case where the WNBA being kind of behind the eight ball of modern basketball is going to help her because when you have fours like Brianna Turner, like Nafisa Collier, like I can't think of more off the top of my head. I don't know, Kayla Thornton. Should probably be playing the floor. Alyssa Thomas. These are all players who like I've named a bunch of players who can take her to the rack and except for Brianna Turner and finish against her. Like you don't really care if she's good enough on offense because that's just not efficient offense for the other team. Like if she can play that well enough, then that's fine. My biggest issue with her is the four spot, maybe the three spot, maybe the five spot, but pretty much the four spot is where you want/need your most help defense coming from. And I'm very concerned about like her ability to provide help defense. She doesn't really do it in college, but also like how much of that is because of the usage rate. Help defense is very much like a do I have the legs to lunge in and lunge back. She has decent instincts for like providing full rotations and helping teammates navigate screens off the ball. But when it comes to really providing the kind of help defense you just want to see from your average four, I don't know if it's I think that's probably where you're seeing the most drawback to her game on the defensive end.
Because I remember another thing in that UConn game was like she got switched on to Dorka, and Dorka was on the right wing, I believe, and then I forgot. I think it was Lou or something that she was driving, and she didn't really make like a hard play on the nail. I don't think she kind of just like put her arm out and didn't really like go full
Mhm.
throttle, which makes sense because Dorka is a decently good shooter. I mean, you have to defend her,
Yeah.
but like you said, I don't know if that's something we can kind of expect, or she's going to be giving a bunch of effort on defense in terms of like flying all over the place. I don't really think you can really expect that at the next level. But
Yeah, when we're
um,
talking about a player who just has to be like mediocre defensively at the next level to make it, those are the kind of things where it's hard to separate them from like how are they teaching the scheme at Villanova? How much is that like a mental thing for her, as in like being
mhm.
locked in on making sure her player doesn't get the ball, and how much is it her trying to make up for her mismatches on the ball, so making sure that she doesn't have to be on the ball and making sure the ball doesn't go to her player. How much is that of that is conserving energy for offense? It's really difficult to tell the difference when we're talking about players who might profile as like slashers at guard. No one's going to be a good enough slasher to make up for having mediocre defense. So that is someone who it matters. It doesn't matter what the answer to that is because you want to see those flashes. When we're talking about someone who profiles like Maddy Siegrist, the offense is going to be either it works or it doesn't. And so the answer to what I was just saying about why is the help not there, that becomes, I think, really essential for figuring out what the upside here and what the sort of range of possible outcomes here is.
So let's go to a short break, and then after that, we will talk about UCLA's Charisma Osborne. Okay, so let's get into Charisma Osborne. Just give me what you believe about her stat profile is right now.
So Charisma stat profile it's pretty quintessential for an efficient guard. For her career, she's around 34% from three. She is a very poor shooter from two for someone with her shot profile. She gets to the rim at a decently above average rate. She is finishing there, but she gets there often enough that the shot profile on its face is pretty good. She's a really good shooter from the corner and not so good above the break for her career. As far as the other aspects of her game, she's been among the national leaders in the Power Five in steals per game, steal rate for her career. She's always been a very efficient playmaker in terms of assist turnover ratio. She rebounds well for a guard. She just sort of gets in the nose of things and gets stat lines kind of across the board. And she's kind of just above average at everything, is what I would say. She's had some years where some things stand out more than others, but for the most part, it's a pretty stable profile, just sort of 80th percentile across the board.
So what we talked about with Siegrist is projecting how her role within Villanova's scheme, which is Maddy Siegrist is their scheme. But for UCLA, I remember someone pointed out about how they're just not like a very creative offense. Um,
Yeah, they run.
like,
I like so Corey Close, their head coach. I like a lot of Corey Close's like ATOs and set plays, but the
mm,
problem with a lot of them is they look nice and they get you a good bucket or they set up a nice like advantage pick and roll, but there's no counters and their base offense isn't really much of anything. It's sort of just drive and kick with players who aren't entirely suited for the drive and kick.
and what I don't like about their offense is it feels like their players are playing in a wrong scheme almost because their tempo, like they've been 25th, 24th percentile. This year they're up to 50th percentile. So they don't have the quickest offense, and they have Kiki Rice and Charisma Osborne, who are two incredible transition players, in my opinion. Where
London Jones is a super up-tempo player. Gabriella
yeah,
Jaquez is two more freshmen talking about is a decently up-tempo player. There's no one really on the team that you look at and go, well, that's why they need to play slow. It doesn't make a lot of sense.
it doesn't make sense because you'll see UCLA put Charisma off ball, and I just don't see that at the next level. Th-
I mean, I think she probably has to play off ball at the next level, at least in some capacity. I don't think we're talking about if it pans out. I don't think we're talking about a primary ball handler here. I think we're talking about a secondary ball handler. Just in that, like, I don't think she has the juice on the ball, and I don't think she necessarily has like the level of passing or playmaking that some of the better passers in this class, your Jordan Horstons, even your Shayla Gonzalez, has to um, open up an offense.
So it's tough for me because like off ball, what does she do?
Well, in theory, shoot,
But
cut.
she hasn't shot. Like that's like my
Yeah, that's I want to save that for a second and get into that in just a second. But like the thing is, like her like secondary skills beyond the shooting are. I mean, I'll say they're basically elite. Just her ability to, despite her size, be a good post threat against players who are decently taller than her. When UCLA and South Carolina played, Osborne kind of gave Bree Beal the business in the post. Bree Beal is one of the best like wing defenders, just in terms of her ability to disrupt players, not necessarily to like totally shut them down, but to like we just really disrupt them and change the flow of the offense. And Osborne just kind of posted her up a couple times and just got buckets on her. And she's really good passing out of the post. She's really good cutting. She's just really efficient and a really good passer too, especially a pocket passer in the two-player game. But as I think I've mentioned before, we're talking about secondary skills. A player of Charisma Osborne's height and Charisma Osborne's athleticism isn't going to be playing out of the post. They're not going to be a wing scorer. We're talking about really good secondary skills, and they all, to succeed, need to play off of. They all need to play off of the shooting, which it looked like it was improving last year, and now it's just not there anymore.
and the shooting was there at the beginning of the season. Like it was starting, it
Yeah,
was a little bit there, and like her stats in conference play are rough. And
yeah,
one other thing about her game is she hasn't like at least recently, she doesn't stand out on the court for me as much as you would like from a first round pick. Like she
yeah.
kind of
There's
hides.
yeah. I wish I had a way to like make this like verbalize this in a way that doesn't sound as silly as how I'm gonna put it. But with players, there's a certain oomph, there's a certain X factor you want to be able to feel when they play. They should be able to leave some sort of mark on the game if they're going to be, one of the best 140-ish players in the world to play in the W. And the thing with Charisma Osborne is like when she makes an impact and when she has the ball in her hands and when she is, assisting, when she's really featuring the flow of the offense, you can feel that. But when she's not, when it's just your standard half court offense, you're not really running any specific sets. Like you don't feel her. She's just not she's not pulling the game in a particular direction. She's not affecting it, at least in offense.
And like in preparation for this podcast, I went from a game of Maddy Siegrist's, and I maybe had like 15, 20 clips from that one game to where I had Charisma Osborne's game and I had like 2 to 3 clips that I thought was actually interesting. And some of that I will say is UCLA's coaching. Like she's too good of a player to where she is off ball like that. I don't think they didn't feature her enough and they didn't try to get her involved as enough. It was like, okay, I think her first shot of the game was like a pull up 3 or something, and then she didn't get a look for like 2 to 3 minutes. I think it was like I forgot, might have been the Arizona game or the Utah game where she hit an early shot, but they didn't continue to feature her.
Yeah, there are, and I want to be clear. It's not, and this isn't a point on Osborne, but like specifically on Corey Close. Like Corey Close was, I think, my vote for Coach of the Year last year. Corey Close is not very good when it comes to like just the schematics and just running a good offensive and defensive scheme across the board. She has nice set plays. She comes out of ATOs very well, but like just in the flow of an offense, it's not a good scheme. But she's very good when it comes to handling people, getting the most out of players on the court, managing cultures, and creating a good environment and creating a good team. And that's very important at the college level. But it does come with these caveats, those strengths and weaknesses in a head coach. It comes with the caveats that when we're looking at a player like this, you're not maximizing their on-court talent within the actual flow of the offense.
So back on the defense, do we think she has the ability to be like a 2-position defender?
Yeah.
I think yeah. So yeah.
I mean, I'll say coming into the season, I was very high on her defense. She's a really good athlete just in general, and I think that stands out pretty well on film. Even if you're not doing a film study, you're just watching UCLA, it's pretty clear that she's a very good athlete. She has a lot of really good tools, I think, on the defensive end, but I think I'm still waiting to see her be able to put them to like use them well. And it's not even, I think this is what we were just saying about scheme. It's not even that like she's toolsy but looks raw. It's that she's toolsy and we can see her use them a lot of times. She just doesn't like get to be the point of attack defender that much. She sort of ends up operating off the ball a lot. She ends up like having to make up for her teammate switches and having to sort of plug holes on the weak side that, you would want to be able to get her on the front side and get her in the primary offensive action more often than they currently do, I think. Where are you at with that?
So I think like her strength, like just looking at her build, strong lower body. I think she can use her arms well as well, like in the post on offense.
Yeah, she's really strong for her size and for her speed.
I do think she will be able to be I think she will be able to be a plus defender, with all things considered. But who is like the last player that you would say is like similar in this vein? Is it Em Adler? Is that kind of like? Would you say is a similar prospect?
See, that one's tricky. Howard Megdal was a plus passer, but kind of worse at everything else offensively, except for like finishing. And on the other hand, Howard Megdal was also one of the best defenders in the country, whereas, I think that Osborne can and probably really could be a plus defender. Like, we're not talking like clearly one of the best in the country. One of the better ones, not like clearly one of the best. So she's in the same vein, but like there's a lot of little things here and there where it becomes tough to comp them as prospects, I think.
Yeah.
I think like the ups and I only don't have a WNBA comp just because I don't have one off the top of my head, but I think like the best case scenario, or not the best case scenario, but like when you're looking at the profile here, you're like hoping for something approaching what DeAnthony Melton looks like for the Sixers right now.
And I had at one point I was like, okay, is this Donovan Mitchell level? But I think I'm past that point where I'm thinking that she
I
has
think
the ability
Donovan
to.
Mitchell is also past that point.
Yeah. So overall in this class, where are you at on like? We'll start with Maddy Siegrist first. Where do you think she positions within this class for you?
That's a great question. I mean, we set up the questions around her game, I think, hopefully well enough in the first couple segments that, for me, I probably have her right around Haley Jones, honestly. And, mid first round pick, maybe on the lower end of the mid first round pick. We're talking maybe like 6 to 8 range in there. Obviously very different players, but I think you're sort of looking at the same question marks, which is we know what you are on one end of the court. We think, what is it going to be on the other end of the court enough to make that first thing stick? I wouldn't at all have a problem with taking her actually really anywhere in the range I just mentioned. And I think really once you get past the first, I think maybe 4 picks, you could say 5, but I really think once you get past the first like 4-ish picks in this draft, I don't think it matters. She's clearly a first-round prospect past the lottery and someone who should be getting those looks. That being said, I wouldn't be surprised if she ends up going like she could probably sneak into the lottery like in real life, not on my board, but in real life, it would not shock me.
Yeah, I agree. So what about Charisma Osborne for you?
With the shooting, if the shooting was even just up at the good level, I would happily have her like right outside the lottery. But as it is, I think we're talking about just the tier behind that sort of Haley Jones, Maddy Siegrist. So late first round pick, probably anything in double digits, I wouldn't really have a problem with. And again, I think it comes down to once you get past the lottery, and then once you get past your sort of Jones Siegrist tier, if you will, it doesn't really matter what order you go in. You got a lot of dart throws. Where are you at on that?
So I'm starting to prefer. That'll be a future episode. I'm starting to prefer Celeste Taylor over Osborne a little bit.
Yeah.
But outside of the players we've covered so far in JC Sheldon, I think Osborne's like in that tier after that, where I'm like,
Interesting.
where I think she could be like a swing where if it goes right, she is a WNBA caliber player. If it goes wrong, she might kind of flare out a little bit, or she's like a Dana Evans type like scorer. Like at that point, like I think that's another avenue that she could go where she just becomes this nuclear scorer off the bench. But her game
Yeah,
is
I think
interesting.
that. Oh, sorry. No, finish up.
No, I was saying her game is interesting from the standpoint that it's so much question marks, especially hopefully she will turn on into March, because
Mm-hmm.
if not, it's looking rough. Because as much as I liked her heading into the season, it's hard to make a case for a player top 10 that it has like 30% field goal percentage and is shooting sub 30% from three. She makes her free
Mm-hmm.
throws, but it's tough.
Yeah, and I mentioned this to you before, but and I mentioned this when I did her stat profile. She shot quite well from the corners for her career, so she is a good shooter. The issue is, given her offensive profile, she has to be like creating above the break threes to be able to like be a plus player on that end. I think, given her current profile, and that's not happening with the numbers that we're seeing and really across her career. It's unfortunate that we haven't seen that level of growth, but I'm glad you mentioned Celeste Taylor, because I'm excited to go over next week a player that player you mentioned in Celeste Taylor being higher, and a player that I think I probably have higher at this point in Grace Berger next week.
So thanks for making Locked On Women's Basketball your first listen today. Now make your second listen game to game NBA. Every moment, every top performance, every result. Locked On Game to Game covers every game across the NBA with local analysis that only Locked On can deliver. Follow Game to Game on Locked On NBA, available on the Odyssey app, YouTube, and wherever you get your podcast.